You caught yourself mid-laugh and thought, why am I laughing? Is this even real, or is it just a coping mechanism? The laugh stopped. Then you became aware that the knowing ruined the laugh. And then you became aware that you were aware of that. And now you're 3 layers deep in a spiral. About a joke? Nobody taught you to do that. It just happened. And the fact that it just happened, that's actually the thing we need to talk about. This video is about what it actually means to be psychologically over-aware. Not the version that gets aestheticized on social media. Not the empath label that people wear like a badge. The real thing, which is significantly less poetic, considerably more exhausting, and almost never talked about with any honesty. We're going to go through where it comes from, what it costs you, why it makes certain kinds of connection feel almost impossible, and, this part matters, what it actually means to use it well instead of just suffering through it. By the end, I want to say something out loud that I think a lot of you have needed to hear for a while. There's a concept in psychology called metacognition. It means thinking about your own thinking. Most people do this occasionally, when they make a mistake,
I feel so
when they're
alone.
trying to learn something, when they
Will
catch
you stay with
themselves
me?
in a bad mood and wonder why. It's a normal,
you.
healthy part of self-reflection. If you're over-aware, you do it constantly, involuntarily, and at the worst possible moments, like mid-conversation with someone you're actively trying to seem normal in front of. Here's what that actually looks like. You're talking to someone. The conversation is going fine. And then, without deciding to, a part of your brain quietly splits off
Same old.
and starts
I think I'm
running a
spiraling.
parallel commentary.
So how's work going? You know,
You laughed too loud
spiraling
just now.
to spiraling.
You're overcompensating by going quieter. They noticed the shift. Did they notice? You're watching their face to check, and now you look like you're staring.
Oh, it's
The conversation
fine.
is
Same
still
old.
happening,
I think I'm
and
spiraling.
you haven't heard the
So how's
last 2
work going?
sentences.
You know,
You catch
spiraling
back up.
to
You nod.
spiraling.
You say something that sounds reasonable. And the whole time, the second tab is still open, still running, still consuming resources, still narrating. It never fully closes. You can minimize it, you can get better at managing it, but it doesn't close. And what's strange about this is that, from the outside, you probably seem completely fine, maybe even calm, maybe even unusually present, because you've spent so long managing this that you've gotten good at the performance of being in the room, while part of you is somewhere else entirely. This doesn't develop randomly. Psychologists who study hypervigilance, which is the clinical term for a nervous system that stays in a state of heightened alertness, describe it as a survival mechanism that gets calibrated to a specific environment. Once calibrated, it keeps running. For most people who experience this, the calibration happened early. Not necessarily in dramatic ways. It wasn't always chaos or crisis. Sometimes it was just a home where moods were unpredictable, where you never quite knew which version of a parent you'd come home to, where reading the room wasn't a social nicety, but a practical strategy for navigating the day without incident.
Não aguento mais ficar parado.
You learned very early that attention
Preciso sair daqui.
was protection. That if you could figure out what someone was feeling before they expressed it, before it became a problem, you could stay ahead of it. You could adjust. You could manage. And you got extraordinarily good at it. The problem is that the original environment eventually changed. You grew up. You moved. The specific threat that trained this response is either gone or fundamentally different now. But the nervous system doesn't automatically update. It keeps doing the thing that kept you safe, even when safe is no longer in question. It's like a smoke detector that was installed during an actual fire, and now goes off every time you make toast. The detector isn't broken. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do. It just hasn't been recalibrated for a kitchen where the emergency is over. That's the mechanism. That's where the second tab comes from. Here's what nobody really talks about, honestly. Being over-aware makes you exceptionally good at reading people, and it makes certain kinds of connection quietly exhausting. Sometimes for you, sometimes for the people around you. You notice things others don't. You notice when someone's smile doesn't reach their eyes. You notice the specific beat of hesitation before someone answers a question they weren't expecting. You notice when a person keeps glossing over the same part of a story, twice, now 3 times, and you can't unknow that. Research in social cognition supports this. People with stronger theory of mind, the psychological term for the capacity to read and attribute mental states to others, are measurably more attuned to emotional and behavioral cues than the general population. The noticing is real. It's not imagination, it's a skill. But the cost of it is that you see the strings on everything.
I feel so alone.
You're watching a movie you genuinely enjoy.
Will you stay with me?
And your brain is already analyzing the narrative structure, asking whether the emotional payoff was earned or manufactured, wondering if what you're feeling is authentic or just a response to the score swelling at exactly the right moment. You're having a good day, actually genuinely good, and some part of you immediately starts cataloging what's producing the good feeling, as if you need to understand it before you're allowed to have it. And then the good feeling gets a little smaller because you look directly at it. There's also a particular thing that happens in relationships. You're talking to someone you love. Nothing serious, just their day. And you're present, you're glad they're there, and simultaneously, you're tracking the subtext. The thing they keep almost saying. The question underneath the question. The version of themselves they're presenting versus the version that seems to be underneath it. You are in the conversation and watching the conversation at the same time. And you have to decide, in real time, whether to follow
they're
the
still
subtext,
watching. I
which
have
might
to
be what
hide.
they actually need, or stay on the surface,
I think I'm safe now.
which might be what
Or
they
am I?
actually want. All while the conversation keeps moving, and they have no idea any of this is happening. That's the weight of it. That's the specific kind of tired that doesn't show up on your face. There is a particular flavor of loneliness that comes with this, and it's different from the loneliness most people talk about. It's not loneliness from lack of connection. You might have real, deep relationships, people who love you, people you trust. It's something quieter than that. It's the feeling of experiencing things at a frequency other people aren't quite tuned to. Like you're receiving a signal that most people aren't picking up. And you've never found a clean way to describe what you're hearing.
It's going to be all
You
right.
want to be understood
about
at the
that.
level you
We can face it
understand
together.
others.
What if
and
it's
it's
not
rare.
enough? It will be.
And the
Trust me.
cruel part is that you know it's rare. You can see exactly why it's rare. You can map the cognitive and emotional distance between your experience and someone else's. which means you can't even have the comfort of not knowing what you're missing. Someone once described it to me as being a translator who speaks a language no one else is learning, which is maybe the most accurate thing I've ever heard about this, and also slightly devastating every time I think about it. Here's the thing I want you to sit with, though, because this is where it gets important. Being overaware does not make you right. That distinction matters more than almost anything else I'm going to say in this video. You can be extraordinarily attuned to patterns, to tone, to body language, to the architecture of how people behave, and still be completely wrong about any individual moment. Awareness is not the same as accuracy. Pattern recognition is not the same as truth. What happens is this: the skill of noticing becomes overconfident in its own conclusions. You read someone's tone, build an entire narrative about what it means, operate on that narrative for days.
It's going to be all right.
And then discover
I don't know about
you
that.
misread it
We
completely
can face it together.
because you were
What if
reading
it's
the
not
pattern,
enough?
not
It
the
will
person.
be. Trust me.
Because your nervous system filled in the gaps with data from a different room, a different year, a different version of danger that no longer exists. Awareness without curiosity becomes a more sophisticated form of assumption. The people I have encountered who actually use this trait well, who turn it into something that serves them instead of haunts them, have learned to hold their perceptions loosely, to treat a red like a hypothesis, not a verdict, to stay genuinely curious about whether they're seeing something real
I feel so
or
alone.
seeing themselves reflected back.
Will you stay
That's
with me?
uncomfortable work because it means applying the same intensity of scrutiny to your own patterns that you apply to everyone else's. And when you do that, when you actually look, you might find that some of what you've been reading in others is projection. That the hypervigilance that makes you perceptive is also what sometimes makes you paranoid. That the stories you've been telling yourself about people have been, at least occasionally, stories about you. That's the growth edge of this. Not dimming the awareness, but learning to question it. If you're still here, I want to say something plainly, because I don't think it gets said enough. The way you move through the world, this particular mode of experiencing things at very close range, with all the exhaustion and precision and quiet ache that comes with it, is not a malfunction. It is not something that needs to be fixed or dimmed down into something more manageable or apologized for. It is a way of being human. One that comes with very specific costs and very specific gifts. And most people who have it have spent most of their lives being told, implicitly or explicitly, that they're just a little too much. You're not too much. You are, to a degree that is sometimes inconvenient, sometimes isolating, and occasionally quietly beautiful. Paying attention. And that matters. Even when it hurts. Even when it makes the laugh a little smaller. Even when the second tab is open and you can't close it. It matters. If this landed, the next video goes deeper into what it actually looks like to work with this trait on a practical level. Not just understanding it, actually using it. It's linked right there. And if you're new here, subscribe. I make these for the people who think too much and feel even more.